if I were to do it all over, I think first thing that I'd probably do, given that I know how difficult it was to scale as fast as we did without really any capital, we had $300,000 from Indiegogo, but I would probably raise like a seed round through friends and family, or have some capital to just scale. Because part of the struggle at this stage is like getting out of the weeds of kind of the saturation of like so many advertisers trying to get off the ground.
You're listening to the Ecommerce Influence Podcast with Austin Bronner and Andrew Foxwell. If you want honest, transparent, and tangible results that deliver lasting value and revenue, this is your podcast.
You may know Justuno for pop-ups, but if you haven't checked them out recently, they're a full-blown conversion rate optimization platform. Yes, they've got pop-ups, but also they've got AI product recommendations, exit offers, a Facebook Messenger, SMS, capture, and a lot more. Brands like Pure Vita Bracelets, Rothy's, and Movement use Justuno to capture and nurture their traffic all the way to conversion. I recommend Justuno to my clients as a top conversion rate optimization tool. Now, you can use AI cross-sells and upsells directly in-page or in-cart with Justuno Plus for higher average order value. Justuno Commerce AI takes in your product catalog and then will display smart recommendations based on visitor behavior. If you want to create a seamless experience from offsite all the way to onsite with unified messaging, you got to check out Justuno. Head over to justuno.com/influence to learn more. That's justuno.com/influence.
Are you struggling to keep track of all your content? As a growing brand, managing content is difficult because it comes in many forms, has countless sources and destinations, and is ever-changing. For more than 20 years, Widen has helped solve these challenges. Use Widen's cloud-based software to bring your photos, videos, copy, and product specs together, and then send them anywhere to quickly support your marketing and sales channels. Brands like Trek, Trunk Club, and New Balance use Widen to take control of their narrative with up-to-date, reusable content, and you can as well. Head over to ecommerceinfluence.com/Widen, WIDEN, for a free demo.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Influence Podcast. My name's Austin Bronner.
And I'm Andrew Foxwell.
And we are fired up about this episode. This has been a long time coming.
Woo, just jacked.
Just completely jacked. This is an episode that's been coming for a long time. We've got Jake Kassan, the CEO of Movement Watches, on today.
Yeah, he just shares some incredible knowledge about the history of the company, all of the things that he's done along the way in terms of thinking about user-generated content, scaling, hiring, the different missteps and positive things that happen along the way. This episode is just packed with information, and we actually went quite long, so hopefully you'll stick with us for the whole episode.
Yeah, there's a ton of gold nuggets throughout the entire journey talking with Jake. For those of you guys who don't know who he is, he's an extremely talented entrepreneur. He dropped out of college, age 21. Now he's 26, has an $80 million plus watch business. He's won the Shopify Build a Business competition, and he really dives into like the different stages of the company, things that help them be successful along the way. Talks about some of the biggest mistakes that they made. Talk about hiring, HR, what his role looks like now versus when he was actually leading acquisition, how he thinks about acquisition. There's a ton of great stuff. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Jake Kassan to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Glad to finally have you on the show. It's been, I think when we first met, I was looking back through my email before the show. You had messaged me back in 2014 when we first met. I remember getting a message that you'd listened to, I think it was like the Amy Africa podcast. And we're like, hey, you want to meet up? And I remember meeting you. We met at like Zinc, I think it was Zinc Coffee in Santa Monica. And at the time you were just, the business was growing super fast. And I remember you saying, I think you did, I don't know what you told me at the time. I did a couple million that year. And you're like, I think we're going to do like 12 million the next year. And I was like, cool. Like I was like, it sounds awesome, but I didn't really believe you. And then like a year later, you'd done more than that. You were just crushing it. So we're excited to have you on, and interested, man. Why don't you give us kind of the rundown for people who don't know your story, how you got started, what is Movement Watches, and how did you get to where you're at today?
Totally. Yeah, man. And first off, again, thanks for having me on. It's been obviously a long time coming. I think it's awesome because like listening to you pretty much day one of the company, fortunately you were literally lived down the street from me at the time, which is awesome. Yeah. we got it. I emailed you like just hoping to get a response back, and then realized you literally were like down the street from me. So it was awesome to be able to, become friends with you in person. And, that even someone in the office today was like, "Oh, you're doing a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, Austin has been someone that like I used to listen to. It had really helped me build my business." And I think again, it like you even probably taught me early on, just given like the people you had on the podcast, how important networking was, and like learning from different people who have wins under their belt or losses under their belt. You can learn so much from both. So it feels kind of surreal to finally be on, but excited to be on here and talking with you guys. But yeah, in terms of movement, what we are, who we are, like where we are today. So it started in 2013. It was me and my college roommate, Kramer, who both had entrepreneurial backgrounds. I had some e-commerce businesses that would kind of get up to $100,000 or $200,000, and I ended up opening up a store in a retail like shopping mall. And Kramer had some Kickstarter Indiegogos, and we were basically roommates. And I wasn't involved in his Kickstarters, but we kind of were always fascinated and had that itch to start a business, and like had some stuff under our belt, but it was never anything that like we saw scaling past too much further than what it kind of was. And we wanted to really, now that we had the experience, we wanted to almost kind of start from scratch and go, what can we really sink our teeth into? What do we believe in? What can grow into a big, company and we can be passionate about? And we were about 21 years old at the time. I had dropped out of college. He had dropped out of college. So we spent our time studying, kind of businesses and crowdfunding, kind of just the scrappy way without having a degree to do so. And for us, it was like we really loved fashion and accessories. And, when we looked at like accessories men could wear, there was only a few. It was really like wedding rings. It was, sunglasses or prescription eyewear or watches. And so watches was something that we owned a couple of, but like didn't really have a brand that we absolutely loved, right? Like the old guys, the Fossils, Movados of the world seemed to be really disconnected, and they relied on, the Macy's of the world to tell those stories where, and they didn't really even stand for anything, yet they were huge billion-dollar brands. And then we looked at brands that were a little, younger, but had very niche brands, like very action sports, skate, surfboard. And that was just skate, surfboard, like snowboard, just action sports oriented. And that was stuff that we had grown out of being 21, 22 years old. We wanted something that was very like, we were passionate about and had this inspirational kind of lifestyle around it. And actually represented more than just a physical product or watch. It was something that really meant more than that. So for us, that was kind of like the thesis and what we wanted to build. And we wanted to have a brand and a product that was, high quality, but also accessibly priced, because one of the things about a lot of the watch brands out there, the Michael Kors of the world or Movado, is their watches were like $400 or $500, where that just seemed ridiculously expensive, especially because you could already tell time on your cell phone, right? Like I grew up, I had a cell phone in 7th grade, right? I'm 26 now. So like I grew up in a generation of telling time on a cell phone, and a watch was more of an accessory. So we wanted something that still had the quality components, but by focusing on a direct model and selling on our website first, we can kind of launch with minimal capital, sell direct globally. Like day one, we already were selling to 160 countries. And basically we're just able to have a more accessible price point because we didn't have to rely on the Macy's of the world and give margin away to them to then sell. So it was a better model too, because we controlled how we talk to our customers through social media. It's our customer service reps talking to them through our website, through Twitter, et cetera. And then we got to keep all the information of our customers because they're coming directly to us. So as we come out with new products, like we've now gone from, men's watches to women's watches to sunglasses to women's jewelry now. So we're a full lifestyle accessories brand, and the goal is to become this $1 billion lifestyle accessories brand. But we connect with the consumer better than any other, legacy player out there, any other Fossil, Movado, Swatch, any of those guys. And we've just grown so fast because, we really reinvested all the money. We're still to this day, we're bootstrapped. We reinvested every, profitable dollar back into the business to scale because we really believe in the way that customers love, the movement and just see the vision. So it's funny because, when I met you, it was like, yeah, we were just in year 2, like a few $1 million in revenue every year kind of like blown away by what we're able to accomplish. And now we're like at the size where we're starting to think about stuff outside of just our direct kind of e-commerce experience. I think where you sell is just a channel, right? Like the brand should be able to be sold, whether it's retail, whether it's wholesale, whatever it may be. So we're actually in 80 Nordstroms now. We do some offline stuff. We've been talking about some other kind of experiential stuff, but I think at the end, it was like the motto we chose was just to start direct because there's advantages and you can sell day one globally, where if you wanted to do that in wholesale, you have to have buy-in and you have to have huge amounts of inventory to supply the Nordstroms in, 10 different countries. So hopefully that's maybe a little wordy, but hopefully that explains kind of where we're at today.
No, it does. It's interesting watching you guys go through definite stages in the business, right? You alluded to that a little bit where, you went through, you were kind of selling just direct 2014. If you were to break it down and kind of look at the stages you've gone through in the business as you guys have scaled up, what do those look like? And how do you categorize where you're at now versus the stages you've gone through over the past, I guess, what is it now? How many years? 4 years? 5 years you've been in business?
It's been 5 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I think every year is like, year one, we had 6 watches trying to figure out like, is this a viable business? What do we really have here? Like, are we able to continue to grow? And then you start to see the ability to continue to scale and you're growing fast. And then you go, okay, well, can we introduce new watches, new SKUs? And then you start to introduce, different designs. And then you see those new designs actually do better than your previous line. And you get really excited about, okay, our customers have given us permission to go into these different, different designs. And like, we're really onto something. Like our aesthetic is something that is something that customers like. And the brand is something that they believe in. So I think that's one stage. And then you start to, get out of, we were in an apartment for, I think the first like 2 years, and then you get an office and you start to hire people. And then it's like, now you're not just worrying about like, where strategy, you're worried about like management. And you actually find yourself like the best chance of success now, or the best way to succeed is actually not having complete ownership of everything and knowing every little thing about the business. It's actually hiring people who are smarter than you and maybe like you need to really lean on to operate and run things. Because as a founder, like there's always only 1, 2, or 3 founders of a company typically. Like there's a limited number of founders always, and those founders have the ability to have conversations and meet other founders and talk about the business in different ways than some employees can. So I think it's just important that founders realize that. I know a lot of founders who are micromanagers, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have to do what you want to do. But it was hard for me. There was a time when we hired our CMO, I stopped having ownership of day-to-day marketing things, right? Like just acquisition and what we're spending day to day and strategy. And what I realized though is like I was spread so thin that like I needed to give that up, and we would not have scaled if it wasn't for me giving that up and bringing someone with experience. So that's been our outlook now. And it's a way, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like just growing up in the business. And there's a limit. You will be limited if you don't hand off responsibility and hire people to kind of like have ownership of things, then you will always be limited in how big your business can actually end up scaling. So, but the secret is hiring good people, because if you don't hire the right person, then that could also be one of the biggest mistakes you make as kind of a company owner. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the people is obviously an incredible part of the equation. I think one question I'm sure you get asked a lot is, a lot of people are asking for advice, right? Now that you're the head of movement, it's people are saying, "Hey, how did you do it?" And so my question to you is, at this point today, 2018, if you were to do this again, what would you do differently than what you did before in terms of digital marketing and acquisition strategy, right? I mean, I think it's more expensive now. The influencer marketing doesn't work as it did in Instagram in 2013, 2014. What are some things that you would do the same, and what would you do differently than what you did before?
So I think, it's funny. I think about that all the time. I still see companies bootstrapped, figuring it out. So it works. The way we did it is like we focused on, we were on Shopify. We're on Shopify. We used certain acquisition channels. Like influencer marketing was easier at the time. If I were to do it all over, I think first thing that I'd probably do, given that I know how difficult it was to scale as fast as we did without really any capital, we had $300,000 from Indiegogo, but I would probably, if I was able to, and it's easier said than done, but I would probably go and raise like a seed round through friends and family, or have some capital to just scale, because part of the struggle at this stage is like getting out of the weeds of kind of the saturation of like so many advertisers trying to get off the ground. Because once you kind of have the capital once you have like the website, the content, and you can get some data around like who your customer is, even if it's like break even, like you're going to need cash to do so. So I know it's kind of like an opposite of the way that we grew. And I'm not saying go out and raise a bunch of money and be, the huge businesses that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars or anything like that, or like lose money. But I do think that like having the fact that we were able to have a few $100,000 on Indiegogo really allowed us to scale. And even Kickstarter and Indiegogo, like there's been so many more campaigns across the board that even that's been more difficult. So it's harder. It's going to take longer to scale, where like we really saw that explosive hockey stick growth. And I think that was a lot of it had to do with like, the same concept. The concept was great, but like timing really helped. And it wasn't that it was easy. It was just that there was less competition in certain areas, and we executed really well in all those areas. I don't know that like any new acquisition channels in my mind are like the new like secret sauce. Like I still feel like people are still doing it a similar way. It's just finding a category that is untapped, or like here's an example. There's a company called Hims. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but and they raised a bunch of money, and it's like serial entrepreneurs. So like that's a rare kind of like obviously they've done it before, they know what to do, but and they're able to raise capital. Not everyone can go and raise $10 million, nor necessarily should you. But in their example, they went, I think the patent expired on like Viagra, and they basically sell Viagra, and then they do some hair loss, like I don't know if it's a pill or shampoo or something. I think it's a shampoo, but they're like just blowing up now, right? Because they like were very strategic in like what category, what are they going to do, like and that's one of those things where like it's working, right? Like I see them all over Facebook, and like I don't know if they're profitable or what they are, but they're able to scale that business, and if they execute right, like I think they'll do well. So there's still opportunities out there. They're just maybe not. And I even think for us, like we didn't just if we just sold watches, if that's all we were is just watches, and not a brand, but just selling like affordable watches, this would not continue to grow. This would have stopped a long time ago. I think it's because of what our brand represents. And so there's a handful of things into it. Again, I think I'm kind of beating around the bush because I don't necessarily know exactly what I would do differently. But there'd be, I know a lot more now that I'd probably be a little more, I'd really think through like it holistically of how to approach it. But at the same time, like I do think ignorance is bliss. And if I knew everything I knew today, like I probably would have been a little more pessimistic, because I know it's hard. But I also think that's part of it. Is like it's hard to like predict how you're going to get from, A to Z. Like you will go bounce all over the place and somehow meet someone that introduces you to someone and or you get some big breakthrough. And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur is just like testing and just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall and finding something that sticks and then working with that. So yeah, I think that's kind of my mentality and always has to be.
I think you're spot on that I don't see a new Instagram acquisition channel right now, right? It's just people are doing it the same way, but it's just a little bit more expensive, and raising the money allows them to kind of move on that. Also, it has to be the right product. Hims has a nice margin built in, so they can spend on that. One of the things I was thinking about, I've always admired and looked at the way you guys have been able to spend money to make money. I think that's one thing that you guys have done a really good job. And your consistent growth. We had conversations, a couple of years ago where you were like, the reason we want paid traffic is it's something we can turn on and off, spend money to make money. How did you think about acquisition and the amount you'd be willing to spend when you were in that earlier stage, maybe first under 20 million? And then how do you think about it now? How has it changed as you guys have moved and you have more products? You have a bigger, I guess, vision of what you guys are doing. So what was it like back then? And then where you're at now with it, your viewpoint on acquisition spend?
Yeah, back then it was very simplified. I'm not a numbers guy, I'll be honest. It was very much of understanding generally what it costs to acquire a customer and what my product costs were and overhead, and then just figuring out how much profit, profit I had at the end of the day, and making sure that whatever my net profit was, I wasn't losing money and I was making money. And as long as I was making a good chunk and I had some cushion, that was generally the way I would go about it. I think I probably got lucky to some degree that I probably should have had someone a little bit more aggressively in the numbers helping us, but we had a profitable business, and a lot of companies aren't even able to be profitable. So I knew that if we had to slow down, or if I had to spend less, I always could, or if I had to whatever it was, if I needed to tell our manufacturer we're going to take another 30 days to pay you, that's just kind of what they had to deal with in a sense. So that was the mindset that we generally had. Now we have, basically an SVP of finance who, essentially acts as CFO and really leads the team and all of our finance and kind of cash flow, et cetera. And then we have our CMO who really helps with kind of modeling out, and we're able to track exact profit on a day-to-day basis. And so very analytical now, and things have changed quite a bit. So very much more analytical now and data driven. And that's their kind of wheelhouse. They've been able to manage kind of profitability and what we're willing to spend across channels. So I think that was more of an important piece.
How does it, on those channels, what are some places now that you are experimenting and seeing decent results that you haven't done before? So you're at that stage now where obviously the brand is important. You're able to, try a lot of different things that some of us may not, in terms of getting outside of, certain channels of acquisition. Are you doing anything I've heard your podcast advertisements. What other things are you guys doing in that realm?
We test everything, to be honest. That's a core kind of strategy that we have of an internal kind of marketing team and brand team, is really keeping that close to the chest. I feel like what makes a brand special is the brand and how you communicate with the customers, and where some brands own their manufacturing plants and some brands own their fulfillment, shipping, warehouses. We've actually outsourced a lot of those components and really focused on, what do we want to be the best in class at? And we want to be a best in class brand. We want to be best in class in product. And we want to be best in class in just all around marketing. So being able to do that, we've tested TV, we've tested radio, we've tested direct mail, we've tested, what else have we tested? Radio, we've tested Pandora, we've tested just about every channel you could probably think of. and are data driven and are able to understand things. And as new ones pop up, Snapchat or whatever, we'll test every single thing that comes out. And I think that's an important piece. So, and you can find wins in other areas. Like there's definitely wins, but I think you have to be careful. Like when you're a small business, when you're under, $10 million, like you shouldn't spread yourself too thin. Like there's a lot of room to really like spend in certain channels, and I would focus on the channels that can really be the scale the most and require the minimal capital. When you look at like TV or even some radio and podcasts, like you have minimum investments in some of these, and it's expensive to get started. I don't think we got started in those till later stage. And again, like there's a lot of these other marketing channels are actually becoming more and more saturated. So it's hard to get into a lot of these areas even. I still think the general, like typical influencer, Instagram, social, like I think there will always be a strategic advantage, or at least for the near future, there would be some sort of strategic advantage that people can leverage in Instagram, whether it's a newer influencer that's not getting a lot of coverage. Like, I don't know, I could even say like maybe some of the gamers, maybe some of like the video gamers who have these huge followings that like the general public doesn't know. And maybe they're being overlooked by a lot of these brands because they don't know if they have influence. And I actually don't know if they have influence other than maybe games. But like that's a good example of like maybe some brands like these gamers have a ton of influence, and that's a good genre that's being overlooked. So I think there's still strategy like that people are finding more and more of. And it's just the thing is every single year, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, things change. Like literally the strategy changes a little bit every single year. And what worked, 3 years ago doesn't even work at all today. So you just have to adapt. But I still think there's opportunity there.
One thing you mentioned as being one of the keys to your guys being able to continue to scale was the ability to hire at the right time and also hire the right people. Being that you were like the founder responsible for acquisition, how did you determine when was the right time to hire a CMO? And what did that search look like to find the right person?
Yeah, so I was spread pretty thin, managing a handful of like channels, and we needed to hire. I knew I needed to hire someone for one of the channels. Otherwise, I was fully committed and tied to our e-commerce site, and I was tied to every acquisition channel possible. But I just felt like I wasn't as available as I wanted to be. And I was just working a lot. I was just like really busy and just felt like if I had to, like, I couldn't do podcasts like this. I couldn't go out and meet people, and every time I just forced myself to do it, and even though I was exhausted and went out and met someone, I'd find so much value there. And I just realized I can't run the day to day and do this at the same time. Like I'm just limited. So, and then I started talking to people within my network, other marketers and CMOs and anyone I could, people under CMOs, and said, hey, what does your CMO do on a day-to-day basis? Like just trying to figure it out. And I just learned that there was a lot of these areas that I just didn't even know. I didn't even have experience in. So I just realized pretty quickly that there was things that I was just completely overlooking that I didn't even know. And I was trying to figure out like, okay, well, is that necessary? Like I scaled this business to 30 million. Like I didn't have a CMO. Do I need a CMO? So a lot of it was just talking to people and then kind of figuring out the things like, oh, that's important. I understand why that's important. I don't know how to do that. Like that's going to take you can't just learn that in a couple months. Like that takes years of kind of understanding and expertise. And then even thinking about growing the team. Like we have an analytics person in-house now. We have, we have the team is primarily marketing. So you have a lot of marketing guys in the house now, guys and gals. And just to manage the team and making sure these people were set up for their careers. That was another thing, is making sure that my team, like, we're learning from kind of best in class executives was something I really wanted to do. So that like whether they're at Movement or 5 years down the road, they're somewhere else, that they can look back at Movement and go, yeah, I set myself up for an amazing career because of Movement and Jake, and because I feel like I would be a bad CEO if I wasn't helping my team better their careers. Like it's just as selfish as you want to be about your business, like you want to help your people. So it was like kind of a combination of all those things. And then I brought our CMO in and just quickly realized he helped from, again, building out the team. He helped from building out kind of different dashboards and figuring out how to kind of build a spend plan and forecasting, and which helped us buy into inventory. And like, there's just so many pieces that I didn't even realize I was missing until he really came in here and took over. So it was eye opening. And then once I had that experience, I was like, okay, that just validated a lot, right? Like, I need to go and hire a bunch of really smart people. And you need to make sure you don't hire too quickly. Like, you don't want to hire someone when that doesn't even necessarily exist yet, especially if you're bootstrapped. But it was like, okay, our finances, like, we're a $50 million company now. Like, we need to bring someone in and to kind of own and operate the finances so we can make investments and feel safe about those investments. So we need to bring in an SVP of finance. And, we've been talking about other roles as we get bigger of like, okay, we want to go and do this, and this is an initiative. So, you kind of, as you get bigger, you learn. And then I think the difference now is I'm at the stage where it's like, I want to go do that. Well, we're not really there yet, but like, I'm not even going to start to explore that opportunity without having someone who's been there and done that in-house. So now it's like, okay, let's bring someone who's best in class in their specific field, knowing that they're gonna have to like build that side of the organization and kind of bring value there. So it's a little different as you get bigger. I feel like early stages, you almost need to like do it yourself until you're about to bust, and then when you get bigger, you're like, okay, rather than like putting the whole company at risk by just kind of tiptoeing into it, you actually want someone to really help guide you and avoid as many potential mistakes as possible.
Yeah, I think that is incredible advice, to be honest with you. I mean, one thing I've heard you mention on another podcast that I thought was interesting was the focus, really talking more about that brand and more about not only the diversity of products that you have, but and kind of introducing new products, but the power of user-generated content. And doing that, I think that's an opportunity that a lot of people miss out on, right? They don't understand that we want to see validation. Can you tell me about how that's built into Movement, how user-generated content and the customer-centric experience is built into not only what the customers are getting, but also your marketing flow and how you think about that?
Yeah, so for us, we were crowdfunded, right? So we just had this community from day one who would just post organic, pictures and kind of went viral, right? We use a hashtag, which is join the movement, but abbreviated MVMT. And we would just have people, customers, fans of the brand, posting like what movement meant to them and what the experience was and why they love movement so much. So it just kind of turned into this viral organic campaign, I guess, where like the lifestyle was so inspirational of our customers, and that they wanted to post pictures. And it was almost like, it wasn't almost intentionally gamifying it, but we started posting pictures of our customers and tagging them. We felt like it was only right to like credit them, where we were looking at like other brands and they'd have pictures but wouldn't tag the photographer, and we're like, why are they doing that? Like, they're not giving credit to the people who are like supporting them. And for us, it was like, we were proud and happy to do that. And then more and more people would take pictures to then just be on our Instagram. So it was just kind of embedded into who we are. Again, join the movement was like a movement. We promised our customers from day one on Indiegogo that we would continue to come out with more products and more watches and, accessible price points, kind of our, again, best in class designs inspired by us. And it's just turned into a promise from day one and a campaign that we just kind of stuck with. So I don't know, it's just embedded in our DNA. And it's also a good way to start a business when you don't have to rely on one photographer or two photographers who are, sometimes you have to really pay a ton of money for, versus like sourcing it from around the world. So it's hard to imitate now because we've just been doing it for so long. We've been doing it for so long, and like we know Instagram and the photographers and the influencers and the content creators so well that it's just like second nature to us. But it is hard starting off because it's just, you have to like learn the ecosystem of Instagram.
Sure. No, it's a unique as Chase Fisher from Blenders, but he always talks about the gram and just like the community there. And actually understanding and knowing what those people respond to and how to speak the language. One thing I'm interested in is, you have, even from, let's say, 2014, you could tell that your vision for the company was large and very, very big. What drives you to grow, like you mentioned, a $1 billion accessory company or lifestyle company? What drives you? And what does the end game look like for Jake?
I don't think about the end game. I think just more about, like, the end game is just continuing to grow this brand. And I like seeing people interact. I like seeing people love the brand, like really like building something from scratch that people really, really love. I like having a business that people are building their careers out of. I think that it's an amazing experience to get to meet some of the people that I meet. I like to give back. Like, I would love to have this $1 billion, business globally, being able to help other entrepreneurs, being an expert in the field. Like, those are all things I like and enjoy. I often think about, like, everyone, I think the goal for everyone is just like how to be happy, right? And so I think about that all the time, and what's going to make me happy. And I think progress is a big piece of that, is just continue to progress. And I think good things come when you grow. If you just continue to grow, I think work-life balance is important to me. I've learned that early on. Like, the first couple of years, you try and outwork everyone, and then sometimes you burn out, and you go, okay, well, I got to work smarter than everyone, so I got to hire some good people and have some balance in my life. Otherwise, I don't know how sustainable this is. Some people can do it. The Elon Musks of the world can do it, but I need to, like, I'm not Elon, so I need to have some sort of balance. But so I don't know. Yeah, I think I just try and remain healthy from a physical perspective, from a mental perspective, and then as long as I'm passionate about what I'm doing and growing this business and I'm learning, those are all things that I really enjoy. And there's days where it's exhausting. I mean, I wish I could say, I know some people are like, oh, you got to wake up every day and love what you do. And I do truly love what I do, but there's hard days. It's not like, I won't say I love every component of what I'm doing. I mean, there are days where you have ups and downs. Like, you have the highs are high and the lows are lows. Like, that is literally entrepreneurship in a nutshell. So you need to know what you're signing up for. But, I think I probably had more highs than lows with movement, but before movement, I had a lot of lows. So, I had multiple 2 or 3 businesses that went under and lost, money from my parents. My dad's completely, like, life savings went under from the economy. So I've definitely had lows and now we're highs, but I obviously anticipate there's always going to be ups and downs. So
where, during your journey of movement over the last five years, like, a lot of people have seen, you guys won the Shopify Build a Business competition, and, like, every year, especially the last couple of years, has seen press like that doing $60 million, $80 million in revenue. Where do you feel like you had periods during this time of growth that were those low periods for you, and what did those look like, and how did you work out of them?
I mean, having the answers about the CMO and hiring certain individuals and management, like, and those are not easy. Like, those are not easy decisions to come about. The easy decision would have been just going and finding any CMO maybe and try just, hey, I need a CMO. You're a CMO. Like, want to work for us? But we did an intense, search and candidates and interview process and like really stuck to our core of, like, we need someone who fits the culture fit, who understands the business, so there's components to that. And, like, it's stressful because you're about to, I've moved my CMO up from San Diego and his entire family. Like, that's, those things like that are, you're moving people from across the United States too. I moved some people from Chicago, New York, like, big bets, like, and that's on me, right? Like, I feel, personally, responsible for making sure that I made the right choice and that I interviewed them long enough and that, like, I had the right move. So stress in that sense, I think early on, I definitely crashed and burned, just, like, mentally, right? Like, I was so kind of, mentally exhausted and high strung on, like, certain decisions or stressing about every little thing and like work over health. There was a period of time where I really kind of stopped going to the gym or running or anything like that, and like didn't really like, it was all about like I just got to work harder than everyone else and sacrifice kind of social life or physical fitness, which had a huge toll on my mental health. And I ended up like, having some bad anxiety issues back in the day. Like this is early on, like, like year 1 or 2 of the business. And after I kind of came out of that, I realized like I need to have a balance. So like now I have this, and it's a struggle. It's not like you just figure it out, but like I think now in year 5, I know that this is a long win, right? Like it's not just going to be a quick win. Like the business, I want this to be $1 billion business. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. I need to make sure that I'm in a good place mentally, physically, emotionally. And in order to do that, you need to have a work-life balance. You need to spend time with family. You need to make sure that you maybe sacrifice some work time to go to the gym or to have a personal life or to date or whatever it is. So there's still sacrifices. Like I still think I sacrifice more than the average, 26-year-old, but I also get to experience really cool stuff. And this is what I signed up for. So.
You are 26, which is kind of crazy, right? You started at 21 years old.
Yeah, it's insane. That's just insane.
Well, it's been really interesting to hear you kind of walk through the different steps and kind of talk about how progressively the bets get bigger and bigger. I saw something on Twitter the other day. It was talking about how your quality of life increases based on the amount of based on the amount of risk tolerance you're allowed that you have. It's interesting as you kind of progress and you're making these bigger bets and you're deciding to move somebody's entire family up from San Diego. Yeah, I can imagine that could be pretty stressful. What does your day-to-day look like now? I mean, you're the CEO, but what do you actually do at this level on a weekly or daily basis? What's your main focus?
I think my vision is really to make sure that like we continue to seize like opportunity. So like figuring out where the opportunity is within the business, from product to our website to where does movement go in a year or 2, 3 years, like just thinking overall big vision. So a big piece of that is like understanding that vision and then making sure that movement as a whole has the infrastructure to support that. So one of the things is just hiring the right people. So like I'm constantly, first off, everyone we hire, I like to have at least lunch with or go and meet with. Like I want to make sure that I sign off on that culture and that person, because that could be hiring the wrong person from a culture fit could be, a huge red flag for the company. Like it's one thing to have, I may not be able to always validate their expertise. Like I rely on certain people on the team to, who's an expert in email or an expert in even influencer marketing, like certain areas to like validate people. But I want to make sure that their culture and they're the right fit for the team. And I see eye to eye. And at this stage, I've probably hired more people than anyone at my company. So I think that like I'm probably the most, qualified to do that. I think so. So hiring people, thinking about, senior hires. I think also just like the network effect of like talking to people, talking with other founders, talking with other, executives. That's a huge thing that it's often difficult to get as much transparency or to talk about businesses to other founders than it is from me to be able to do that. Like I'm a founder. I can talk about my business better than anyone else. And I can just ask founders questions and get some tidbits of information that really could impact our business tremendously overnight. And I found that like me and a founder having a kind of a open dialogue conversation, like I'm the only one that can do that in the company. And even if I sent an employee to go and like, network or talk with, a founder, like it's just going to be a different dialogue. So I think it's important, like the networking aspect of it. And it's why I live in Los Angeles, because I get access to that every single day. And, I actually have to turn down meetings sometimes because I don't want to just spend all week having coffee with people. But I found that like every time I'm like, I'm going to go to this event, and like I went to Shop Talk, great example. I went to Shop Talk And I went to one speaking event, and I just went and either had coffee with people, had lunches, I had drinks. I met people on a personal level. And now when they come to LA, like, we're friends. Like I've learned so much more from that than sitting and listening to like a scripted kind of PR release to like the world. And not to say you can't learn from both. There's definitely learnings from both, but it's different when I can ask questions and have a friend that I can call on the phone. And I have friends now that are running, $100 million businesses. I have friends that are running $1 billion businesses. Like, it's insane to be able, like, I have to pinch myself, but having friends like that, to be able to ask questions and learn from is huge. And I like the fact that, like, in another 2 years from now, everyone's growing. This whole industry is growing. I believe in a lot of the businesses outside of like that I'm friends with too, like not just my own, but like friends that I have. I'm like, you guys are going somewhere. So just to have that network and maintain that network continues to grow is important. So that, and then, I'm still involved in like the marketing and the brand and the product. Like, I'm still very close to all those elements. We have a designer now that's in-house full time. So it's like, I'll have the inspiration regarding the product. We'll work together, figuring out the vision of like the next product line or sunglasses or, a big marketing event. Like, I'm still involved in the conversation, but it's not like a day-to-day planning or managing. Like, my team's we're doing a little Coachella thing this weekend. I'm clearly not there. I should have gone. I was going to go, but I just need a weekend. I need a weekend, man. That mental health, I need it.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's insane. I think it's very true. And you're dying the minute you stop learning. And so I agree. You are very privy to a lot of those people, and I'm sure that's incredibly helpful and good for the business. So it's interesting to hear what you're doing at this point. Well, we've clearly taken enough of your time. I think it's been wonderful to have you on the podcast and sharing some of your just mad knowledge. If people have questions about stuff, they just hit you up via mvmtwatches.com.
Yeah, you can either go to mvmt.com. I think if you want to check out the product, the site, learn more about the brand, you can go there. If you want to touch base with me directly, either shoot me a message on pretty much any of my social platforms, or go to my website. My handles are just Jake, JakeKassan. That's pretty much how it goes for Twitter, Instagram, anything. And then my website is just Jake Kassan, so JakeKassan.com as well, and you can just shoot me an email there. I suck at responding, but I typically try to at least respond to a handful, and I pretty much read everything. So,
Jake, it's been awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, here we go. Well, it don't matter. You got money. You ain't got no soul.
Hey guys, it's Austin, and if you've been loving the podcast, you got to go check out brandgrowthexperts.com. That's where I work one-on-one with my clients to help them build faster growing, more profitable online stores. I've got coaching programs and workshops that we host all over the world. Would love to have you come check it out. If you're a fast growing e-commerce business, or you want to be a fast growing e-commerce business, you got to check it out. That's the spot for you. We go more in depth than we do in the podcast with comprehensive trainings and coaching to help you scale up. Check it out, brandgrowthexperts.com. See you there.